Hello and welcome to the Curious Twist YouTube channel. My name is Melody and I am the owner and designer of Curious Twist. In this video today, I'm just going to talk you through the tutorial that comes with my kits. Don't worry if you don't have one of these kits, it's not compulsory. There is a little list coming up in just a second that will tell you exactly what it is that you will need to have to get started, and of course, most importantly, you will need a pattern. So even if you don't have one of my kits but you love my designs, you can also get one of my patterns and they are available to instantly download on my website. So inside your kit, you'll have your hoop. Inside the little bag here is your fabric and your needle, and also of course your pattern and all the threads that you'll need for that pattern. As I say, there is the instruction leaflet inside, but if like me you're more of a visual learner and can't follow blooming instructions for toffee, then this should help, hopefully. Okay, so we can put most of this to one side. Also need to say actually that you will need a small pair of scissors as well for this. They're not in the kits, I'm afraid, but I do sell them separately on my Etsy page, just saying. Anyway, okay, so inside that bag, as I said, there's your fabric. You'll find there's two different pieces, which has probably thrown you already. Don't panic. This piece is just for covering the back when we've actually finished doing the cross stitch itself. So you can put that to one side, keep it safe and forget about it for now. Okay, so this is called Aida fabric, which is the fabric we use for cross stitch. This particular type that is included in my kits is called 14 count. And it's nothing particularly scientific or difficult to get your head around. I don't know if you can see that, but all the little tiny holes that we stitch through, there's 14 of those per inch, so that's why it's called 14 count. So therefore, if you have 16 count, it will have 16 holes per inch. See, told you it wasn't complicated. Okay, so excuse me, the first thing we need to do is to find the center of our piece of fabric. So we just fold it over like that, and then fold it in half again, and then where those folds meet, give it a nice press down, and that is the center of our fabric. The next thing we're going to do is take our hoop and we're going to put the fabric centrally inside the hoop. So you need to unscrew this at the top here. If it's a bit stiff, you might need some pliers to do that. Some of them can be a little bit stiff sometimes. We're going to put the ring, the complete ring, without the screws, on the table, put the fabric over it, and you can just see the outline of the hoop through it. So it doesn't have to be exact, but we want that center point in the fabric at about the center of the hoop. Then this hoop goes over the top of that. You may need to undo it a little bit more for it to go. And then what we need to do is pull our fabric nice and taut. So you can pull it and then do that little screw up, pull it a bit more. Now what we need to make sure we're not doing is pulling the fabric too much in one direction. Otherwise, the little grid will be skew, and we want our stitches to be nice and even and precise, so we don't want them going in weird directions. Take it from me. Okay, so as I say, we just get that nice and taut and give that another couple of twists. You may find as you go on, as you stitch through the pattern, that it gets a bit loose again, and all you need to do is just pull it and retighten that. Okay, so we know roughly that our center's here. So if you take your pattern, you may have noticed that in the center there's like some of them have a little circle on, some have a star, and you're probably thinking, what the hell is that? How am I supposed to stitch that? It's actually just to show you where the centre is. So I've put that on myself, but a lot of patterns that you might buy will just have the arrows. So what I tend to do is I then, if that's the case for you, you can just fold along the line and along there, and that will give you your centre as well, or use a ruler and just put a little dot of pen there or something, just so you know. So the centre, this is where I'm going to try and explain it. I'm not very good at explaining things at the best of times, but I'll give it a go. So the centre of the centre of the pattern here is it corresponds to the centre point on our fabric. So when we start to stitch, we work from that centre point and we work outwards. This is so that you know then that the pattern, when it's finished, is going to be central onto your piece of fabric. If I was to start here and I didn't start it till here, and then I stitch all the way over here, I might find that by the time I get to this bit, I've gone off the end of the fabric. Does that make sense? I don't know why I'm asking you that. It's not like you can answer me. Anyway, so yeah, that's why we start at the centre and we work out. And also, if you want to put it in a picture frame, you don't want to have like lots of blank space over one side and none the other. Even if you're going to cut it down to fit into a smaller frame, you want to have a nice even amount of fabric to work with around the edge. Otherwise you're quite restricted as to what frame you'd be able to put it in. So I hope that makes sense. So the next thing we need to do is to thread our needle and get the thread ready. Now you may have noticed that the thread is quite thick, and you're probably thinking, how the bloody hell am I supposed to get that through the eye of that needle? Well, don't panic, because we're not going to be putting the whole lot through. So what do I mean by that? Let's just take this black thread off. So I would say take a piece of thread that's about the length of your forearm from there, sorry, I can't get it all in shot, to your elbow. If it's longer than that, it's going to get tangled up as you stitch. And also you may find, as you're pulling the thread and the needle through the fabric and you go like that, if anyone sat next to you, they're going to get a needle in the face. That doesn't go down too well. So, as I say, we've measured a piece about the length of forearm, and then we can just snip that bit off. And then this goes, keep that safe because you'll need it, obviously. Now I'm going to try and get this in focus. The thread that we use is called 6-strand cotton, and that's because the clue's in the title. There are 6 strands that make up. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to get this in shot. Not doing too well. There, that's probably better. There are 6 strands that make up the floss, and we only need to stitch with 2. So to do that, I think it's probably going to work better if I have it on a white background so you can actually see better what I'm doing. So get hold of one of those threads and another one. Oh, actually we'll do one at a time. So what we do is, if you hold these pieces tight here and then just gently pull that thread. Okay, so we've got one of our threads. So we put that down. So that that doesn't tangle, you can just give that a little shake and that all comes out again. So again, to do that again, take one piece like that, hold those nice and tight between your finger and thumb, and just pull. Okay, so we've got our 2 threads. The other 4, put those to one side. We'll be using those afterwards. Okay, Now, there's lots of different ways to knot this. There are fancy ways, but I'm just going to start with a real basic knot because, especially if you've never done this before, I don't think there's any point in confusing you any further and making this any more fiddly and difficult. I don't want to put you off already. So I will cover the fancy knots in another video at some point soon, hopefully. But for now, as I say, we're just going to do thread the needle as normal and put an ordinary knot in the end. So I like to just wet the end of that like that. And then the eyes on these needles is bigger than a normal sewing needle. So it might take a couple of goes. Hang on. Bloody useless, aren't I? Oh, I'm just going to have to do it out of shot because I can't do it properly. Hang on. There. Right, so, and then we only want to take that through the needle a couple of inches like that. We're not going to loop it round. That stays like that. So then with the other end, to tie the knot, I just wrap it around my finger, put that through and pull. You may find, oh God, where did it go? God knows. You might want to do it twice, otherwise the knot is just going to come through the hole there. So here we go. Right, so now we need to see where do we start with this. So our center point here is this is quite a good one really, because our first letter is right next to it. So say for instance that point is our center point, and that first stitch there is just one stitch across and one down. So we go one stitch across and one down, and that's where you would start. So to do your cross stitch, we're going to come up through the back of the fabric like that until the knot reaches there. Don't pull it too hard, otherwise, as I said, it can come through the fabric and it'll make the hole really big. And then what we're going to do is we're going diagonally across there, and we're going to go back down to make, so we've done the first half of our stitch. Okay, and then I'm going to come back up through the bottom here. So I don't know if you can see that very well. Let me just come up and then diagonally back across and down. And there, we've just completed our first cross stitch. So that stitch there relates to that stitch there. Does that make sense? I hope so, because I don't know how else to explain it. So anyway, then you're probably thinking, so where do I go now? Well, there's really no rule. I tend to work, I'll work in a row, and what I tend to do is, so I'll come back up in that bottom hole like I did before, and then go down. But instead of coming up, well, I do come back up through, but instead of completing that stitch, if you see on the pattern here, there are 3 stitches there. 3 stitches on that row across the top of the M. So what I do is I do all my half stitches in one direction, and then I can come back on myself and finish that little row there. And then from there, I would start on the next row. So the next row on here is just below that middle stitch, and then one next to it. So I'm below that middle stitch, I'm coming up there, down. So that's the first half of that stitch, then come back up and go down. And to finish that row, I'm sure there probably are rules about this somewhere as to where I would go from here and, you know, whether it's best. I just do how I feel, and I get bored easily and I change it quite often. So now on this one, if we look here, to me it makes sense to carry on down here. So I would do that first stitch there, because that line is all down through the middle of, sorry, excuse me, that part of the M is all down there. So I would go and I would do my next, and I've lost one of my threads somewhere, sorry about this. See, it's really easily done. That actually just caught on my ring there, so I'm just going to quickly rethread that, and then, excuse me, go up through there, back down, and I would do that whole piece. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, let me count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and then you've got a stitch next to it that way at the base of that part of the M. Then I would finish that one, do that one, have I just gone down through, oh yeah, sorry, I've just gone down through that one, so I'm gonna have to go okay. And then what I'm going to do is go back up through that line there. I really hope that makes sense. As I say, I change the rules for myself all the time. All I would say is that you want to get all your first parts of the stitches going in one way and then complete them coming the other way, so that it's nice and neat, rather than some going, do you know what I mean? So that it's nice and uniform. That's the only thing that I've followed by. So but other than that, it's really up to you. So then I would go and start, so I would then start this piece there. Okay, so you're probably wondering what happens when you get to the end of a piece of thread. So I will show you. Okay, so imagine I've only got a small piece of thread left. So what I do is turn the fabric over, and then with my needle I go through the back of these stitches. So that's tucked in there. Get my scissors. And then that piece from earlier, so it's all nice and neat. So what I would say as well is, when you've finished a piece, say we've done the whole of this bit, and you need to move a considerable distance to another part of the pattern, rather than trail the fabric behind the back of the get my words out in a minute, bloody hell. Instead of taking the thread up, like still attached there, imagine it's still attached. Sorry, let me just, so say then from here, imagine if you can, then I need to go up here to do some stitching. I wouldn't go like that, because that's when you actually come to, when you finished your design and put it in a frame, that can show through. If I was only moving a couple of stitches distance, I would do it because it wouldn't matter so much. But especially with black thread or any other dark threads, it's going to show through the fabric quite a bit. So I would actually, as we did there, just knot it through, cut it, and then put another knot and start at the new part that I want to stitch. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I've yabbed on for ages and I've just waffled. I'm really sorry. I'm not very good at this video thing. Hopefully I'll get better as time goes on. But I've avoided it for so long because I just feel so uncomfortable. I'm so out of my comfort zone right now. But yeah, hopefully that's going to help you and get you started at least. Any more questions, any other videos you'd like me to make, please put them in the comments below. That would be great. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on social media.